Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. Please enjoy your meals. As some of you may know, we finished up the Red Wings home season a couple of weeks ago during what was arguably, or perhaps ironically, the nicest week of the entire 6-month season. But despite the weather challenges, commonly referred to as April and May in my business, it was a wonderful season. We didn't make a playoff run, but fortunately that part isn't my job. That's the responsibility of the Major League affiliate, the Washington Nationals in our case. But my job is to ensure we remain a financially viable organization, and I believe one of the best ways to do that is by being a strong community partner, as strong as we can be. Let me start with a little background. In the 1950s, a few years before I was born, the Red Wings were in trouble. The franchise and the stadium were owned by the St. Louis Cardinals at the time, and they were preparing to shut it down, a move many in Rochester feared would strip the city of a beloved institution and a vital part of its identity. After all, baseball had been in Rochester at that point for more than 70 years. So the city fathers asked my dad, who was in business at the time and a lifelong sports fan, but not a baseball executive, if he could find a way to save the team. So he got to work and put together a stock offering to buy the franchise and the stadium from the Cardinals. Well, 8,222 Rochesterians bought stock, and when what money he was short, he put in himself, making him the single largest shareholder. But my dad never considered himself the owner of the ball club. He saw himself as the keeper, with a self-imposed responsibility for ensuring its viability for future generations locally. 10 years later, my parents and I moved to Florida, where my dad continued to run the club long distance until he passed away when I was 15. And that's really where my story begins. My mom and I returned to Rochester then, and I watched her go from being the woman behind the man with no business experience to the woman who had to step up to the plate, so to speak, to keep my father's dream alive. She fought, and I do mean fought, with men who thought they saw a chance to take over the ball club. But she held steadfast to keep the ball club afloat through good times and bad. And she spearheaded the renovation of Silver Stadium, giving it 10 more years of life before we secured funding for our current stadium. Among other things, my mom taught me that if you're more knowledgeable, passionate, and hardworking than anyone else in your business, you just don't give up until you've succeeded. And with that kind of role model, I had no choice but to try to keep what had become the family dream alive. Well, as fate would have it, I married a ball player and traveled across the country and South America. I saw what worked and what didn't in different baseball communities. I saw bad promotions, I ate bad hot dogs, and I noticed which clubs gave back and built a sense of pride in their communities and which ones did not. When my husband at the time retired, I thought I'd come home to do a little clerical work at the ballpark for a year at no pay. I now consider that my internship year. But that 1 year turned into a lifetime. I kept my head down, worked hard, and my role grew bigger as I became more knowledgeable. But I have to say that at the time, I felt that I was a woman in a man's game. I worried I wouldn't be taken seriously, so I walked softly. I asked for help, but never demanded it. I made suggestions, but never barked orders. I spoke gently, not abrasively. I established myself as a considerate person, but truthfully, in those days, I was especially gentle because I was apprehensive. Then one day, fairly early in my career, our ball club's then general manager, whom I had recommended we hire for the job, took me aside and said, "Stop acting like a coworker and start acting like an owner," which was a real wake-up call for me. In my effort not to step on toes, I had been looking weak, or lacking confidence, or maybe I was just plain afraid to take responsibility if I made poor decisions. But from that day on, my world changed. If he believed I could lead, I should believe it too. No more trepidation. Take the chances needed to make a positive difference. By the way, as some of you may know, today I still walk softly unless a certain situation truly requires something more of an assertive approach. A few years later, in the 1990s, I again found myself in a situation that proved to be a revelation for me. I was a couple of years post-divorce and meeting with some of the most powerful men in business and in politics in the city of Rochester, trying to convince them that we needed public funding for a new stadium, like I'd seen in so many other cities across the country. One very prominent man said right in front of me, but he dared not look at me when he said, "I know she thinks she'll always keep the ball club in Rochester, but what if she marries a man who doesn't like baseball? He'll make her sell the team and we'll be left with an empty stadium." Well, when I regained consciousness, I was truly insulted, and I wondered how many men he'd asked whether their wives had to sign off on their business ventures. So I made it clear to all of them that I considered the Red Wings a community asset and that no one was going to take them away from Rochester, not as long as the fans and the community wanted us here. And I put my lipstick on and I walked out of the room. Those gentlemen may or may not have believed me at the time, but a few years later, there was a new city and county administration who were more forward-thinking, and I was able to convince them a new stadium would be an asset for the entire community, which I believe has proven to be true. Yes, I've dealt with naysayers like we all do, but I have to say I will always be grateful to the men who believed in me and supported my crazy ideas over the years and weren't put off by the fact that I was a woman. Before I had the titles, while I may have been considered the owner, I still needed the board's support of my efforts. The late Elliot Kerwin, while president, never made me feel like a woman in a man's world. He would endorse my plans and would admit that it got easier when we had some success. He didn't see gender as a help or a hindrance. And Gary Larder, Elliot's successor and my predecessor in this position, was a president whose respect for all people could teach a master class in social responsibility. Gary today is still my right-hand man, and I will forever appreciate his brilliant advisory role. And I can't mention supporters without gratefully recognizing Dan Mason, our general manager, whose respect for women in business is unmatched. He is a community hero. So what are the rules of the game that I've learned? Well, here are the ones that I live by. We aren't men. Don't try to be one. We're often better communicators, more thoughtful, and more attuned to people. Use those gifts. Earn your seat at the table by being strong, not a bully, funny, not sarcastic, considerate, but not a pushover. 2, support other women. We can be our own worst critics when we should be lifting each other up, especially for the sake of younger women who are still proving themselves. It's hard enough when people judge you by how you look even before you get to show your ability. And that's generally something men never have to deal with. Don't take things personally. I once watched 2 male attorneys fight in a meeting and grab drinks 30 minutes later. When women argue, we can stay mad forever, and yes, I might have been guilty of that myself from time to time years ago, but try to learn to separate business from personal feelings whenever you can. Fewer ulcers that way. Next, negotiate thoughtfully. Listen carefully, find common ground, know where you can bend and where you can't. And if a deal falls through, let it go. Not every deal is meant to be. Know your stuff. No one should know your business better than you. gather information, study it, and throw it forwards and backwards and see what sticks. And next, admit when you don't know something. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you credible. Bring in your experts, let them shine, and give them all the credit they deserve. And finally, take care of your community. As we have heard already today, Jamie, you did it so eloquently. Whatever you could do, walk for a cause, read to a child, donate to a charity, just do it. Some of my happiest moments are when I can make someone smile or relieve their burden just a bit. It doesn't take a lot, just a little forethought. I'll close with a story that some of my close friends in this room already know to be true. 3 summers ago, I went to the first of many meetings that Major League Baseball has had specifically for minor league team owners. It was held at the MLB headquarters in New York City, which I have to say were the most impressive and palatial offices I've ever seen. In that room, there were 119 male team owners and me, a ratio that I've grown accustomed to in baseball. We had our meeting, I asked questions, I answered questions, and then we took a morning break. Many of us left the room. I walked past a line of 40 men waiting for the restroom that day. And I proceeded to walk right into the ladies' room with no wait at all. At that moment, I finally realized being a woman in a man's game can have a real competitive advantage. I thank you all for listening. The sweetest. Thank you so much. Please. Thank you. Thank you. So, you guys are too much. Don't embarrass me.